with Angie Klink. Hi, Angie.
Hi, Rick.
Hello. Great to have you here. We want to talk today. We're talking about incredible women. We're going to talk a little bit about Jill Ditmire a little bit later on. I have a little clip of an interview I did with her some time back.
Excellent.
And the incredible women that
My
we're going.
phone's ringing.
Yeah,
Excuse
that's
me.
okay.
It's a spam call.
It's okay. No,
Let me turn my phone off.
only the best. Only
There we
the
go. One of my fans, spam.
they just won't leave me alone.
I know.
The the book of yours we're talking about, and Angie, for those of you who don't know, and I can't imagine there are any, but for those of you who don't know, she's a wonderful, wonderful author and has done some really, really interesting books, including The Dean's Bible, 5 Purdue Women and Their Quest for Equality. And these, do you mind me naming the women? Can I run down the list rather than let you do it? Dorothy Stratton, Helen Schliemann, Beverly Stone, Barbara Cook, and Betty Nelson, who were deans of women or deans of students in their time, and had an incredible bond among them, right?
Yes, they mentored one another and were connected throughout their lives, their entire lives, even after they retired from Purdue. So
I think that connection and that mentoring among groups of people is so helpful.
Oh,
it's
yes.
Such a positive way to go about business rather than be constant rivals for power or whatever. That the cooperation is amazing.
Yep.
And we talk about the Dean's Bible, and when I first read that, I thought about, well, sometimes there's a pamphlet that's like the Carpenter's Bible or the Plumber's Bible or whatever it is, but the Dean's Bible was an actual Bible, right?
Yes, actual Bible. Here's the cover of the book with the women. This is called 5 Deans Walking. Was taken by a Purdue photographer, Dave Umberger. But yes, it was an actual Bible that had belonged to the first part-time dean of women at Purdue, Carolyn Shoemaker. And she passed away rather suddenly. And then Dorothy Stratton was hired by President Edward Elliott. She came from California and moved into Carolyn's desk and found her Bible and hung on to it. And then when Helen Schliemann was the next Dean of Women, Dorothy decided to write her name and the date and a favorite Bible passage in the front matter of the Bible and pass it to Helen. And then it went on and on until 2013. It was given to Purdue Archives and it is preserved there today.
So. Fantastic. And the time frame that we're talking about runs from the 30s into the 90s.
Yes.
Which is amazing sea change of everything about particularly how women were dealt with society.
Right.
Changes in that time.
Yes. And 3 of the women were in Women's Reserve at World War II, 3 of the deans. So that's a big aspect of the book and how that sea change for women, but yet after the war came back and it was more like, go back home and the men are back, they want their jobs back. So there's that little section, there's the 60s, all the unrest on college campuses, there's the women's rights movement, then move into the 70s. And there's also about the Act for the Disabled, which Betty Nelson, who's the only living dean now, she addressed that on campus, making the entire campus accessible, curb cuts and elevators and handicap parking. She handled all of that on campus. So.
Oh, that's a massive responsibility.
It was.
And there wasn't a lot of guidance, I wouldn't expect, on exactly how to do all of that.
No, she was blazing a brand new trail. And, of course, that also meant people who were blind, people who were hard of hearing, and a lot of people just were not accustomed to making changes to accommodate all people. So we hear a lot about it today, but then it was all brand new. So.
And their service and their contributions went certainly beyond the campus. As we mentioned, the Coast Guard Women's Reserve, but they served presidents as well.
Yes, on different commissions of education commissions. Helen Schliemann was one of those, and then Dorothy Stratton, who was the captain of SPARS, she named SPARS, which was the Women's Reserve of the Coast Guard. And in 2010 or 11, I think 10, a Coast Guard cutter or ship was christened in Dorothy Stratton's name, and Michelle Obama christened the ship. So the book also entails that. It goes from it really spans how these women affected the country. So,
And Michelle Obama's christening that boat sort of brings to mind that the amazing change in the participation of women in all areas, corporations, politics, social social justice seeking, all sorts of areas of life, that the participation of women in government right now is seems to be at an all-time high. And
right.
I just wonder how these women would look on that now.
Yeah, I often think of them. I thought of them a lot the previous 4 years, what they would have said with a lot of the comments.
Yeah.
And then I think about today, I mean, how they would react and talk among themselves too about the topics. Dorothy was so well read. She read the New York Times, and whenever they would have a dinner or gathering, she would bring clippings and topics of what she wanted to talk about. So the other women had to be on their toes because Dorothy wanted to discuss the major headlines. So,
wow.
Yeah.
I've often thought that would be an interesting restaurant. I saw it in this Monty Python movie, The Meaning of Life, where they had a restaurant where the waiter would bring you things to talk about.
Oh, really? That is a very good idea. Yeah. I love it.
That might, I see you're having an uncomfortable silence. How about if we just hand some
let's
stuff
talk
out?
Politics. Let's
talk
3 that you're not supposed to talk about.
That'll make everybody comfortable at dinner. Let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, fantastic. So they went through this all these sea changes in how things were done, and I can't imagine that they operated without opposition.
Yeah, there was a lot of opposition when it came to the administration, because they were ahead of their time in their thoughts and what they saw women could do, and particularly Helen Schliemann, who had the longest tenure, she for about 20 years, and it was in the 50s, 60s, the time when so much was changing for women, and she had to battle the MRS degree, where everyone assumed that women were coming to college to get married, and
Right.
A lot of them did. And then she would try to explain, well, what happens if the marriage goes south, or once your children are grown, what are you going to do then? And so she was always battling. They needed to finish their degrees, because you never know what's going to happen. And she also asked all women she knew, faculty, staff, students, do you have your Go to Health fund? Meaning, do you have money put back that you can tell the spouse or the job or whatever, to take a hike, and you can still have money to live on while you figure out the next chapter. So that was rather bold of her in that time period.
Well, the Go to Hell fund is an amazing thing, and you can tell when somebody has a Go to Hell fund. Mm-hmm. Like music artists, when it's demanded of them that by record companies that they must continue to do a certain kind of record and a certain kind of music, and they don't want to anymore, well, they're either going to do it or they have a Go to Hell fund.
That's right. Yeah. I think all artists, as a writer, I get that. Oh, you want to change my book that much? Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna.
I don't need money that bad.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're presented with these things.
Yeah,
I've talked before about a radio consultant once said I might want to change my name to Rick Hollywood. And I said, well, no. And he said, why not? And I said, because I've never wanted a job that bad. And I had no Go to Hell fund, so I was gambling. But anyway, Mummey turned out to be unique enough for them. So I didn't. That's
right. It's memorable. It's very memorable. There was a movie with that name, so there you go.
Otherwise, I'd be Rick Hollywood, and I just couldn't imagine going anywhere and hey, Mr. Hollywood, your table is ready. I often wonder, do Sting's checks say Sting on them? Like
Good
when he
question.
does business, is it just?
Yeah. Hey, who knows? Probably does.
Sting, party of two. Your table is ready. This is a really informative book, and I think when people get to read this sort of material and learn this kind of history, that it really gives a whole nother layer of history that people are sometimes not exposed to when they're learning history in the conventional sense in schools and what have you. I think that the participation of non-white not male people is vastly overlooked.
Yes, oh, definitely. And that's why a lot of people, there aren't that many books at Purdue about the women of Purdue. I have two of them really, but and I have more I want to write. So that's right. And these women, it's also a history of a little bit touches on the African Americans on campus, because they were very progressive in that sense of helping, you know, Black students. And in the 60s, of course, there was the unrest, the marching on campus, and there's a really interesting story in there about that. And a line of Black students marched to Hovde Hall, the steps of Hovde Hall. They each carried a brick in a sack. And it was just a symbol. They just stacked the bricks. But, you know, the people in Hovde Hall, and Betty Nelson was an assistant dean at the time. So she was in there and told me a story about looking out and seeing them walk up there and put each individual brick on the step. And they put a sign out, said "the fire next time," which is a quote from James Baldwin.
Right.
And then they had some requests, what they wanted on campus. That was their main focus to come there. But it's a really interesting story, and there's a video on it actually called Black at Purdue, or Black Purdue,
Right.
I believe. So
Well, when
there's
people talk
just
about
so many layers to talk about.
yeah, when people talk about privilege, and people talk about it negatively and positively, but to me it means never having to say I'm here.
Right.
Like your presence is recognized,
Yeah.
and whatever your contribution is recognized without you having to jump up and down and wave your hands because of some other thing, your gender or color or whatever.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. That's right. Yeah.
People I think get it twisted. It's not that your life has been easier than somebody else's. It just hasn't been hard for those reasons.
Right. Right.
A wonderful book that people should really go and pick up and really take a look. And you can, if you're not a physical book person, there's Audible and stuff like that, right?
Yes, it's on Kindle. It's
Kindle.
Yep.
Right.
Various ways. The paperback has a group reading guide. If you're in a book club, it has questions in the back in the paperback. So
Fantastic. That's
yeah.
wonderful. And there are some other things of yours that are out there. You wrote a couple of children's books as well, right?
Yes, Purdue and an Indiana University. Purdue Pete Finds His Hammer, and they're both lift the flap books and have landmarks of the universities. And yeah, the Purdue Pete book came out in 2004. Now it's in its third printing, and it's a university bookstore.
Is your process, your creative process, differ a lot when you're writing children's books from your other work?
Well, there's some similarities and differences. Similarities is just the perseverance that a book takes, while the words and the copy in the children's book is, you know, of course, short. It's a rhyming verse, but I produced that entire book. I hired illustrators, I guided them, directed them, I hired a printer, and I did the whole thing. It was, you know, I was the publisher as well.
Wow.
So that took a lot of perseverance. It took a couple of years to actually make it into a book. And so that, I need that for every book, you know, to stick to it. But then, of course, it was just a little short verse to write. So compared to the Dean's Bible, which is like, you know, 400 and some pages. So
right. Well, that's a big difference. I'm just wondering more about sort of, you know, if I write some things that I want to become lyrics, or write a song or a poem or something, or I've tried some other prose writing and stuff, and I'll write a thing, and I'm so chuffed for having done it. Oh, good for you. And then I go away and do other things. And then I come back to it and go, who broke in to my little office and wrote this thing? Like, where did that come from? Does this stuff, does it flow from you? Do you have to piece by piece put these things together? How does it work for you?
I think, you know, you get it down. It's just like you're laying tracks, like train tracks. Just get it down and then come back and look at it and see where it needs, you know, good writing is good editing. So definitely it pays to leave and come back and look at it again. Yeah.
Good writing is good editing.
Yep.
Well, that's credo. I'm just going to write that on my wall in
Yeah,
lipstick.
it's rarely perfect the first time you write it.
Well,
If you think it is, you need to think again.
and so you don't want to be that feeling of imperfection when you go back and look at the thing. You don't want that to um, to take charge of your whole process. You have to
No,
get through that and keep refining.
just expect that. Yeah. Yeah. But then you have to know when to stop too. You can't just keep fiddling with it and fiddling with it. You have to find, like an art piece, you could paint forever, but you have to finally say, okay, this is
That's
it.
that
I'm
Coco
finished.
Chanel thing of you look in the mirror before you go out and take something off.
Yes, I love that. Yes.
There you go.
Take
Well,
one piece of jewelry off, then you're ready.
yeah, absolutely. Or one line or a paragraph or a chapter or rearrange things.
Yep.
It's an amazing process from the idea that I want to express this and how it comes out at the end is an incredible process for me. And your process produces some really fine stuff and really great material that people need to find their way to if they haven't already. And it's this incredible story of these 5 women is really inspiring, particularly for those of us who I've got daughters, and I want them to exist to live in a world where their merits are what what their merits is what drives their life and career, and not external sort of social pressures. That would be great.
Yep. Amen.
We would appreciate that. Angie, thank you so much for spending a little time with us. We really
Thank you.
appreciate it, and we appreciate what you're doing. And again, the title of the book we're talking about is Dean's Bible, 5 Purdue Women and Their Quest for Equality, which is an ongoing thing. And we thank you, Angie, very much. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you, Rick. Bye-bye.
And again, thank you to Angie Klink for being an incredible person. We have one more incredible woman to talk about, and that's the late Jill Ditmire, who passed away recently. She was a news anchor here in Lafayette, also in Indianapolis and Detroit, came back to Indianapolis and worked with public television there, and was a wonderful advocate for the arts, entertainment, food, wine, and everything fun in Indianapolis and in our region. And we really miss Jill. But we did get that chance to interview her, and we talked to her specifically in this clip about her love for wine.
Well, I'm Catholic, so when you're young, they give it to you and they tell you it's from God and it's good.
Right.
Which it is.
Yeah, they're right on both counts, huh?
Yes. My family always had wine when I was growing up, not a lot, and they would share a little bit with us, so I was always able to taste it. I appreciated it, and obviously I didn't abuse it or anything, so I came to know about it. And being in the news business, you work almost every holiday, so I like to cook, and I started reading about wine and kind of self-studying with wine and pairing it with the cooking that I did. And when I was in Detroit, Michigan, anchoring a morning show, we used to have a lot of the local restaurateurs and wine people in on the show. And so I ended up taking several classes up in Detroit about the different regions and growing areas and wine in general, and just really fell in love with it. When I came back to Indiana to work at Channel 13 in Indianapolis, I kind of got involved with the Indiana Wine Grape Council. They're right up there in Lafayette at Purdue University, and got my American Wine Society certification to judge wine competitions. So I get to travel around to judge wine competitions. And it just kind of rolled into that. And when I left commercial TV for a while, I produced a television show here on PBS for about 8 years, all about Indiana wines, Midwestern wines, wines around the world.
Right.
And so I just kind of kept educating myself, learning more about it, and owned my own wine store for about 8 years. I just sold it just 2 years ago when I was trying to run the wine store and work here at WFII at the same time. Can't do that. So nowadays, I still write about it. I still judge wine. I still work with a catering company and do private wine tastings and pour wine events and that type of thing. So it's just it's chemistry and farming is what it really is.
Right.
But it's also something that you can learn something new about every single day if you want about wine, and I like that.
And that's the kind of curiosity that makes you not only a good reporter, but a very good person. Rest in peace, Jill Ditmire. Thanks everybody for joining us. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We love you. See you next time.